Now for a review on what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda. Did you have a good weekend?
I did. I hope you did too.
I did. So same to you, Charles and Adesua. Good morning.
Good morning, Constance. I did have a fantastic weekend, and you don't want to know how much.
No problem. You can keep the details to yourself. All right, to look at the headlines this morning with us, we have Dr. Iyobosa Owogaren. He is editor, Nation's Capital of This Day newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with This Day. Ohanaeze joins Southwest, South-South, North Central in backing Tinubu's tax bill. Atiku wants transparency and full disclosure of next recommendations. Zulum reiterates opposition to proposed fiscal alteration. President Bola Tinubu's tax reforms bills is being supported by regional bodies from the South-East, South-West, and South-South. According to Ohanaeze Ndibo, this bill is transformative. On the contrary, former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Governor of Borno State Babagana Zulum do not believe the bill should be passed in its current state. Zulum particularly says it will make the North poorer. I mean, this bill has taken an ethnic dimension, as we can see from the headline. But the fact remains that whatever we were doing before hasn't worked particularly. The country therefore needs to strike a different path, and that's why a robust debate is required on what should and should not be on this bill. Dr. Owogaren.
Well, it is very sad that the whole conversation is taking the ethnic and regional dimension. But if you look at the bills, I'm talking about the tax reform. It has its own benefits, although people have their different view about the bill. But if you look at it critically, it has some measured benefit, which I think, because of the issue of the VAT, which I think is causing the whole debate. We cannot say because of the VAT sharing formula, then we should just dismiss the entire reform. But I think, like some people said, there's need for the federal government to carry out some, further consultations about this issue. But if you look at it critically, like I said, it has measured benefit. Major benefit at the end of the day will benefit the entire country. It addresses the issue of justice and fairness in the fiscal policies as far as this tax reform is concerned. So we should look at it critically. The lawmakers should look at it. Forget about the ethnic dimension that some people are trying to push, or regional dimension that people are trying to push. Let them look at it very well and see how they can, reform the entire process and see how they can come up with a tax that is acceptable to every part of this country.
I know, Charles, as Dr. Owogaren rightly pointed out, the kernel of the issue is derivation, what is part of the issue. But the bottom line is also that we need a productive country. We haven't been productive so far. So I think this bill, or the four bills, are trying to partly address this particular issue. And it has to be addressed. The current state of affairs is not sustainable.
Absolutely, and that's why I think the northern politicians are kicking against it the way they are, saying it will impoverish the north. Well, remember, we've been having this discussion, and it's all about you getting, what you get is dependent on what you pay as taxes. And so that lack of productivity in the north has become so glaring. Remember, the north has been...
It's not only the north. I think the country in general, lack of productivity.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. But, some of these states have some comparative advantage because, for instance, in the southeast, they are very, very enterprising. Lots of businesses, medium-scale, small-scale businesses. Where in this country will you go and not find a southeasterner not running a business? So the entrepreneurial spirit of the southeasterners and the fact that you have oil in the south states and, of course, in the southwest, with Lagos as its epicenter, there's also a lot going on in terms of international business. So they do have a comparative advantage as far as productivity is concerned. But then move up north, where it is supposed to be the nation's agrarian hub, particularly the north central. But you have problems of insecurity, most especially, and the fact that agriculture is not even being encouraged. Everybody has become a politician dependent on handouts from the federal government, and even religion plays a part. Remember, one of our guests here did say that when you burn trucks of beer up in the north, citing religious preferences, and then you still want to get a share of the revenue accruing from the beer that is being brewed elsewhere. How fair is that?
I think to be fair to the North, particularly if we talk about the North being our food basket, our food is VAT exempt. And so a lot of what they do give to our economy is not going to that tax bracket. So even if they're not drinking the beer or they're not consuming the beer, the food and the meats that they're providing to the country is not falling under that same VAT.
Exactly.
And so they are not even being able, and if they do put those things under VAT, the whole country will go hungry. So we do have a need an equitable sharing formula.
Unfortunately,
well,
the production is not even going, the food production is not even happening the way it should. I mean, we should be industrialized now. We should be doing mechanized agriculture, but most of what goes on there is subsistent agriculture.
There's also the argument about derivation. No, the argument about monies or funds being sent to states based on population. I think that's part of what the North is kicking against. You know, they get more money based on population. So this tax 4 bills is trying to reorganize all of that. Okay, so the point is that there's a lot of discussion to be had so that eventually we can get to a point where every part of the country is encouraged to be productive. Let's look at Daily Trust. CBN to retire 1,000 offers 50 billion naira payoff. They're offering 97 million for 4-year service, according to some. Then 17 sacked directors yet to be replaced. The retirement will happen before the end of year, according to Daily Trust. The CBN Governor Layemi Cardoso is said to be intent on reducing the workforce and realigning the bank. Some 860 staff have already applied for the early exit package that is on offer. I mean, this is not surprising at all. Under the former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, the bank went on a recruitment spree. In some cases, very unsuitable staff for it. And then in some cases also it was based on patronage. So all of this seems to have created a problem for the bank. So it is being partly cleared up, Dr. Wogaren.
Yeah, absolutely, you are right. It is not just under Emefiele. That has been a pattern, for a very long time. The CBN has become a dumping ground for the children of the political elite, influential people across the country. And so much so that if you ask insiders, they will tell you that 70% of the staff you have there don't do anything, because it's like a dumping ground. If you are well connected in the country, especially among the political elite, the traditional rulers, and other influential people across the country, they have a way of sending their children to that place. And so much so that majority, or about 70% of the workforce you have, and at CBN, you don't need them there. So I think the ongoing reform is a welcome development. You will recall that when the current CBN governor came, he was able to downsize. About 300-something people were asked to go. About 7 directors were asked to go. I think it's part of their ongoing reform. They need to reduce the workforce there drastically. Actually, with technology, the job of about 10 persons can be carried out by 1 person. So on doing that, you can also save money for the federal government and ensure that those who are qualified will be those working at that very critical institutions, rather than using it as a dumping ground for all kinds of people because of their influence, of their fathers, of their parents, or what have you. So we need to drastically reduce the workforce there for them to be able to, reform that status.
Good points there, Dr. Wogaren. The central bank is key in any nation. It should be professionally and especially independently run. That hasn't been the case for a while now. So we'll see how that goes. A Daily Sun, coup, I'm not aware Gowon pleaded on my behalf, Obasanjo. He lied over purported reconciliation with Ojukwu Ono. Last week, former head of state Yakubu Gowon said he pleaded with late General Sani Abacha to spare the life of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. President Obasanjo says that information is new to him. He has now thanked Gowon for this contribution in sparing his life. Gowon was said to have written a personal letter on Obasanjo's behalf. I mean, this one, Nigeria is an interesting country with a history that is weaved around certain individuals, whether it's, President Gowon, Obasanjo, General Babangida, General Salami Abubakar, President Muhammadu Buhari, and the rest of them. There's a lot of providence that happened. We've also seen a revolving door, which partly explains why our governance is less than impressive. It's been like the same people around the cycle.
Yes, I'm lucky enough to have interviewed two of the people you mentioned there, Abdusalami Abubakar and former President Olusegun Obasanjo himself, and we spoke a lot about that era with the the military era, the coup era, the threat of life, and his time in prison. Now, I think it's very good that he thanked the former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, who's also someone who went to go and help recruit Abdusalami and Abacha during that era. He helped recruit these young men into Nigeria's military service, and that era has still shaped how we see ourselves today. But I think something that we can give them credit for as elder statesmen is that they keep preaching the sanctity of one Nigeria and one nation. They keep preaching against this idea of us breaking apart and going to our regional hubs and trying to, say the North wants this or the South wants this. And I truly think that that is what you require from elder statesmen, for them to keep saying that the most important thing is the sanctity of our nation and our future.
Well, that's why I do know that conversation about one Nigeria is also a little bit of a problem for some people, because there is nothing like blind one Nigeria. Nigeria can be negotiated on the basis of fairness and equity. Charles, do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Which is the argument of many. You have one Nigeria that is not fair to all. If you want to have a united country, it has to be equitably run.
Yeah. You see, we have so many differences, and unfortunately, instead of leveraging on the links that bind us together, that bring us together, most of the time we are trying to promote the difference, the ethnic differences, the religious differences, and a lot of tribalism, nepotism, and what have you. And unfortunately, most of these things are usually done for the sake of political expedience. For instance, I grew up in Jos, Plateau State, where you have a mix of, ethnicities, a mix of religions, and it was such a fantastic place to live in. All of a sudden, with the return of, politics, the division started being promoted because people wanted to leverage on the numbers, either for ethnic reasons or for religious reasons, and all of a sudden Plateau State now became a hotbed of violence. So that's the problem. Most of the time, for the purposes of political expediency, we have been dividing our country instead of uniting it. And unless we have the kind of politics that preaches unity, we definitely will not have a united Nigeria. So our political leaders have to be sensitive to the needs for unity and not to swell up their numbers by doing what you call divide and rule.
Okay.
I have to quickly,
The Guardian.
Yes.
Let's move on. In the interest of time. The Guardian. Labour begins nationwide strike, cites empty promises by government. Dr. Wogiaran, how far do you think this will go?
Well, I think to a very large extent, we have many of the states who have complied with the labor law or the minimum wage benchmark that was set by the federal government. Many states have started paying that. I think there are about 4 or 5 states that are dilly-dallying on this issue. And I think the NSC gave a deadline, and that if by December 1, those states, about 5 or 6 of them, refuse to comply, then they would direct their branches at the state level to go on strike. For me, I think you can't fault the directive of the NSC at their national headquarters, because this is something that has been dragging on for a very long time. states were given enough time, to negotiate with the NSC at the state level. And many states have done that, and they are paying. And the other states who are not paying, I don't see the reason why they should not pay. How much are we talking about? 70,000, 75,000 naira, or 80,000 naira, which some states are paying. As a matter of fact, how far can 70,000 naira, for example, take you on a monthly basis, a worker? So I think for the governors who are dilly-dallying on this matter, I think they don't mean well for their people. Because the truth of the matter is that you were elected to better the life of your people, to serve them, to the extent that, their living will be better off. So if you have a state governor, some of them collecting almost about 800 million naira security vote, and they are complaining about their inability to pay their workforce there, so just 70,000 at the end of the month, then it's something that should worry every person.
Okay, let's stay with The Guardian. 2027 splinter APC group moves to register with INEC. This group is called Team New Nigeria. It has announced it's breaking away from the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress. This plan was unveiled yesterday in Kano by its national leader, Modibo Farakwai, who claims that those who fought for President Tinubu's victory have been neglected. Adeswa, let's come to you. It is evident that some Northerners are unhappy with President Bola Tinubu and the way he's running the government. Yeah. They do have a point in regard to poor performance and how the high cost of living has affected not only them but other parts of the country. However, the North has also been part of this government, the APC, for the last 9 years. So, everybody has blame to be shared, not only from President Bola Tinubu.
Definitely. Now, I think the APC was always going to be a strange collection of people when you had the core North CPC members and then you had the Southwest AC members coming together to form this coalition party. And obviously, coalitions sometimes are weakened when it comes to tough times. But I'd say that one thing I wanted to say, and it's actually exactly the point I was going to make earlier, that sometimes we will say that the North is against a policy, but it's probably, there's a difference between the North being against a policy and northern politicians being against the policy, because if we remember, it was the same Senator Ali Ndume who was on our rise complaining because the CBN wanted to utilize their offices in Lagos. And it's the same Senator Ali Ndume who walked out of the chambers in the Senate saying that the tax bill was going to negatively affect the North. And so when we think about what is good for the people of Nigeria, good for the northern people of Nigeria, sometimes it's not the same song that the people are singing that the politicians are singing.
All right.
And so they can make their other parties all they want, and I'll enjoy watching them on TV, but the effect of a splinter APC group, that I don't think is substantial.
Okay, let's look at the international headlines. Daily Graphic, President begins Accra Thank You Tour. Ghana votes 2024, 5 days more. There's a quote here. I think that they've made it a tradition so far since the elections to put a quote up in the paper. It says here, but governments are elected by good citizens who don't vote, or bad governments are elected by good citizens who don't vote. This is according to Plato. Again, I think it's emphasizing the importance of voting. When you do not exercise your right, the possibility is that you will not be governed well. Yolanda.
Well, very interesting quote, and I think that this tour is a good sign. It's a nice way of, creating a personal bond with the people of Ghana and to build that support for what is to come. That's my belief on that.
Okay, let's move on to Citizen newspaper. Citizen from South Africa. Questions about 649 crooks that are at the blackboards. That's the number of teachers in Free State with criminal record. It's not clear when the Free State Department will address this issue of teachers who continue teaching in spite of the fact that they have criminal records. This has been a source of concern to people. How are teachers vetted and recruited, which allows some with criminal record to go into the classroom and handle children? This, some feel, poses a risk. Yolanda.
Teachers with criminal records, definitely an area for concern. Are there no other ways to reform these prisoners? Are there no other ways to, bring them to be useful to the community than to bring them to our children, our future. I don't think this is the right step, but it's interesting that we have this as a speaking note, so that at least hopefully this government may be able to look into more of this, because having this is it's a time bomb waiting to explode.
It actually makes one wonder, I mean, what is the recruitment process
Absolutely.
in that part of South Africa? I mean, when you are being recruited for a job, you're supposed to submit a CV and then, of course, go through an interview of some sort. You're supposed to have references and stuff like that. So apparently, there is a big, major flaw with the recruitment process, and that's why you have so many people with criminal records ending up as, you know, school teachers, you know, among vulnerable kids.
Systematic failures.
The Times, Russian airstrike hits Syria as Assad vows to crush rebellion. President Bashar al-Assad of Syria is facing rebellion from groups trying to take Aleppo. He's been helped by Russia with airstrikes targeting these groups. The rebel group Hayat Tahrir took control most of Aleppo over the weekend. I mean, you know, this crisis has been on since it's been 13 years now. And there's been an attempt to remove al-Bashar, but that hasn't, or al-Assad, that hasn't happened. It means that once this crisis starts, it never ends. This is the second biggest city in Syria, and it was a key rebel stronghold until it fell to government forces in 2016 with the support of Russia. Now the rebels are against it again in order to take it. Dr. Ohanaeze.
Well, crisis everywhere. Not just in Syria, we have in Pakistan, Gaza, and so many other parts of the world. I think the institutions that's responsible for the moderation of this conflict around the world apparently has failed. I'm talking of the United Nations. I think there should be a consistent effort on the world leaders to see how they can find the solutions to the several crises that we have around the world. It is not helping the country, it is not helpful. At the end of the day, the victims are the innocent people. And like I said, I think there should be a deliberate effort on the part of the world leaders to sit down and say, how can we minimize this conflict, you know, across the world?
Well,
something needs to be done.
The multilateral system is failing, and that's why we have all this crisis. Finally, to Daily Mail, BBC was warned 4 times about Wallace. MasterChef star faces furious backlash for blaming middle-class women of a certain age for his problem. The more he talks, or you know, the more he seems to dig himself into the hole. People are utterly furious and gutted by this comment from him. I hope, well, I am afraid this is all that we can take for the newspaper review this morning.
Yes, and I think that's what we can take all the time we have actually here on Daybreak. It's goodbye from me. I am Adesua Giwa Osage.
Please do keep it here on Arise News. I'm Charles Eruka.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. The morning show is next.